Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. So to interact with us, as always, you can join us on our Facebook live stream. So hello and good evening to all of our friends watching there, as well as the YouTube stream as well. So hello to all those in the YouTube chat running alongside this video. Let's see. As for introductions, you know me, John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, we have Jason Richards. Good evening.
Good evening. Jason Richards here, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Jason. And Juan Sepulveda, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the brother behind FreemasonryArt.com. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. And last but not least, a special guest for tonight's episode, Brother Donnie Dillon. So, Brother Donnie Dillon, tell us where you're from, what you do, and any other Mason stuff that's fun.
All right, so I am Donnie Dillon. I'm a member at Rockingham Union Lodge number 27 in Harrisonburg, Virginia, although I have been living in the Richmond, Virginia area for a few years now, so I have not been back to my mother lodge in some time. I'm a registered nurse. I am certified by the American Nurse Credentialing Center as a psychiatric and behavioral health nurse, and I've been working in the field of behavioral health, both inpatient, outpatient, and community-based programs for the last 19 years or so.
Wow, that's impressive. So welcome, glad to have you on. As always, glad to hang out with you. Want to give a special shout out to all the patrons who've been supporting the show. You can head on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable to help keep this Masonic education going for a long time. I want to thank all of our pages, knights, and squires who've been keeping the show going for over 6 years now. Fantastic. Also, additional disclaimer, all of us, except for maybe Donnie, are not mental health experts, right? So we're going to talk a lot about the intersection of mental health and Freemasonry and some things of how we deal with a lot of anxiety in times of high uncertainty. And yet, if you truly need help, seek out a professional who can really help you figure things out. So as always, that's part of the greatest part of the fraternity is that we are brothers to lean on and to lend an ear. And then there's also so much that brothers could do. Anything else I should add as a little disclaimer, Donnie? Because I know you have some little references and websites and stuff that you want to allude to later on as well. But
I think that your introduction was real good, and I think we'll just get things going and see where the conversation takes us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Juan.
Yes, this episode should not be construed as mental health advice.
There you go. Yes. Absolutely. So again, tonight we're trying to think about something that is unique, that is relevant, and that is something of value that we can give because this is a crazy time. We've been talking about this for the past 3 weeks. Nobody has expected the psychological, economic, just work-life balance that has just been completely shattered by COVID-19. And so everyone is being disrupted in some way, shape, or form. And so that doesn't come for free. That does come with at least some mental stress that affects everybody because it's a change in routine. It's something different. It's something that our prefrontal cortex has to kind of deal with. And so tonight we're going to talk about the intersection between some of the principles and foundations and philosophies that we talk about in Freemasonry and how it directly applies to what we're here to do, like the whole core part of trying to work on yourself, work on improving yourself, and that includes your mental health as well. And so I'm just going to open the floor up to any insights that any of you had, and also, as always, if you're in the chat, go ahead and drop some of your perspectives too about how you see Masonry and mental health intersect. So take it away.
So one thing one thing I was going to kind of jump out at is the idea of Freemasonry and brotherhood, and how I think a lot of folks, me especially, are having a tough time because of the isolational aspect of the current pandemic. We've got stay-at-home orders in a bunch of states. We're staying at home, either by ourselves or with our immediate families. When we're used to, as Masons, going out and getting that face-to-face interaction, several nights a week, upwards of several nights a week. So I think a lot of folks are really going through that withdrawal, especially that just that social interaction withdrawal that you get from Freemasonry, because it kind of reinforces our very human need for community and our very human desire for interpersonal interaction. And you can do things over Zoom, but I think just about anybody will tell you, like, doing something virtually vice doing something kind of face-to-face, talking to somebody face-to-face, there's a little bit of a difference there psychologically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to hug someone over
sure.
Zoom.
Right. Yeah. So, as a nurse, I have not been staying at home. My job still requires that I come out and take care of patients every day. So in that respect, I haven't had to deal with some of the feeling of being cooped up and, stuck at home and can't go out that some other people have. My wife is working from home while she's trying to, take care of the kids because schools are closed. And so I know that she's felt it. I know that others in my family have felt it. So personally, I'm sort of lucky in that respect, that I haven't had to deal with quite the same level of social isolation as some other people have. But Jason, you were exactly right. Social isolation is huge. We are social creatures. We're built to live in groups and families and clans and tribes, and that is how we function the best. We seek that out, and when we're cut off from that, we feel very, very lonely, and often in a very short period of time. This is something that we all know innately. For example, we start teaching our children how important socialization is and being part of the group from the time they're very, very young. Think about if your kids are doing something obnoxious or something they shouldn't do, what's often the first thing that we say? Go to your room, right? Why do we do that? We're not smacking our kids. We're just providing them with some social isolation. You can't be part of the group if you behave this way. And so from a very early age, we start teaching them the importance of being part of the group, and that social isolation is unpleasant and painful. It causes a little bit of psychic pain. And it's just a little bit, and we use it to teach an important lesson about how to be a part of the group, how to be a part of society, and what appropriate and inappropriate behaviors are. But just the fact that we're so socialization is so important to us from such an early age just highlights how important it is to us, even as adults. And so as Masons, we're very lucky to have this sort of built-in social group that not everybody does. But yeah, when we're not able to do that, it is particularly difficult.
Yeah, another illustration about the importance of having that closeness to other people that I heard recently. They were saying, think about incarceration. You have people preferring to be among criminals and violent offenders than to go into the maximum punishment, which is isolation. It's sending them into a tiny cell or all by themselves. And even there, they do everything possible to communicate with other people, creating slingshot messages or shouting or singing, or they even play chess by shouting. But it's that effort to still remain connected. So the punishment within the systems of punishment are to isolate people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and to carry it to an extreme, I mean, you remember the movie Castaway, right, with Tom Hanks? He was isolated, and it wasn't like he was in jail. He wasn't isolated with a group. He was entirely by himself. And so what did he wind up doing? He made a friend for himself, right? He had
Right.
Wilson, the volleyball, I think it was, the handprint on it. So when we go through periods of isolation, gone on long enough and in extreme enough conditions, we can actually start creating people to socialize with. And we've seen this in the corrections facilities, where people who are in isolation for a long period of time can develop psychotic symptoms
Wow.
that were not there before, just as a result of being separated and being isolated for so long. So yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah, I don't want to build on that too. Back to that, like, we have this institution. If you're lucky enough to be a Freemason, right, you instantly have, friends you've never met around the world, right? And that's one of the value propositions of Freemasonry, especially once you find out that someone is a Mason. You know that you have a shared common experience. That instantly elevates you into a certain part of a tribe, right? That you feel connected. You have something you can talk about. You have a shared experience, a shared sense of your core, and so that is key to tribalism, in the sense of tribal meaning that you're part of a group, you're part of a collective, and so that is where the fraternity part, the social fraternity part of this the craft that we have is so critical and so key, that it is an instant network, not for business purposes, but a network of just friends that you can reach out to. One of when people asked me early on, when I started telling them that I was joining Freemasonry, the way I described it to them is that these are people that, if my car broke down on the Beltway at 2 a.m, I could call them and I could count on them to help me, and I would do the same for them. And that's something that you don't get from your coworkers. It's something you don't get from necessarily your neighbors. There's something unique about being part of a unit that is willing to assist. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So being separated from that, coming back
Right.
around to what we were talking about, being separated from that really causes a lot of anxiety for some people. And so anxiety can really manifest in different ways for different people. Um, for some people, it's just unpleasant. Oh man, I miss my friends. I miss going out. I miss my lodge brothers. But for other people, anxiety can have more significant physical symptoms: trouble sleeping, difficulty making decisions, um, uh, finding ways to sort of numb out or avoid interacting, because those short interactions are not fulfilling. And so sometimes you'd rather avoid interacting at all than to have a short, unfulfilling interaction. So things like sitting and watching an entire series on Netflix or something like that, as opposed to taking steps to protect your mental health. So all of these things can be symptoms of anxiety that are manifesting, that are causing real, actual physical changes in the way that your body works and the way that you're thinking. So we need to take those things seriously.
Donnie, could you speak to what I seem to observe of that spiral effect? Let's say, for example, someone gets hit by a slight depression of some sort, or is being oppressed by some sort of anxiety, and then they start seeking things that will feed that anxiety. Can you speak to that? I think I see some of that, and perhaps there could be some cautionary tales to brothers that may be feeling depressed or anxious, and then are basically putting themselves in a position that is going to make, through their behavior, make their circumstance a little worse.
Yeah, it seems like they repeat the same mistakes again and again, or they look for new or better mistakes to make, right? Um, so there are some people who think that when you make a decision, you have an event in your life, and it's very negative, that you look for ways to recreate that, hoping to in some way change that outcome. And so you will look for ways to recreate the event or the situation again and again and again. And maybe the details are just a little bit different, but it's sort of the same thing. And each time is a chance for you to act in a different way, or for the outcome to be a different one than what you had before, until you sort of get the outcome that you want. Unfortunately, sometimes those bad decisions are never going to have a real positive outcome. And so we see people in cycles, like you described, repeating the same mistakes again and again and again, sort of in an effort to have it end in a much better way than what they had thought. What we can hope for and what we can try and do is show somebody that as long as you keep making the same mistakes, you're going to keep having the same outcome. And maybe we can try and reframe things a little bit so that instead of looking for the same situation with just minor details changed, maybe you can do things differently to create a new situation. And only by creating a new situation are you going to have a truly different outcome.
Well, Donnie, some of that is some of the cycle of repetition, even if it's a bad cycle, is inherently comforting because our lives have been
absolutely.
turned upside down. And
Yeah.
you know, if you have a cycle that you're used to and you're comfortable with, you might choose to get into that cycle again simply because it's comfortable, even though you know the outcome's going to be, you're going to be worse off for it.
Sure. Yeah. If chaos in your life is what you're used to, and that goes away, then sometimes that stillness and that peace can be uncomfortable. This is not very much different from trying to learn how to meditate, right? You talk about the monkey mind and settling your brain down, and sometimes it's really hard to sit and just be quiet with your own thoughts. The same is true with our lives. If you're used to a life that's busy and chaotic and you never know what's going to happen, having a calm, quiet, comfortable existence may not be what you want or what you're comfortable with. And so you're right, people look for ways to spice it up a little bit. And sometimes they make really bad decisions to do that.
No, I'm guilty of that because, as it was kind of said jokingly in the chat rooms here, is that, the extroverts are having a hard time just because there's no one to like walk around and get energy off of.
Right.
Again, Zoom can only do so much, but I'm a self-declared extrovert, and
so the extroverts that aren't getting their chance to go out and be with people are really annoying their wives right now, who are all stuck at home.
You were listening during the green room, weren't you? It's so true. But I did want to deviate the topic just for a little bit because I find it fascinating if you really step back and look at what Masonry is here to do from a philosophical standpoint, that it is a tool for personal reflection and introspection. And so that's something that we all should be doing as Masons regardless. That's why we have the ritual. And so I'm in the camp of that even if Masonry is a social club for most people, that the ritual tells us differently. And so that's the whole point. That's what the ritual is, what separates us from the Elks and the Rotary and anything else. And so the ritual clearly tells us that we should be reflective and introspective on our life's journey. And so that's what I think is unique about Masonry. And so it's giving us the what to do, not the how to do it. And that's for every person to have their own journey of how they interact with their religion, how they approach things from a philosophy point of view as they traverse the world, and how they interact with fellow human beings, right? So these are all aspects that we should be guided by, the principles that we're taught in our ritual, and then go off and improve ourselves in Masonry. I mean, that's literally what we came here to do. So
sure,
when you look at what our degree system was set up to do, we use analogies like Solomon's Temple, right, to describe things and to use them not as literal biblical explanations, but to use them in a more allegorical or in more of an allegorical setting, to think about how are we improving the temple that is here, that's in our body, that's in our mind. How are we making our minds better living stones, right, for a building not made with hands. That's what I think is fascinating when you step back and look at what we're taught in Masonry, through the degrees, through the catechisms, through the symbology, it's all there to have us step back and reflect on, like, what are we doing about ourselves, both from, again, however you align your internal compass, but that also can apply to your mental health as well, right? And how can we use the tools we're given to make sure that we are keeping our mind clear, we're keeping ourselves focused, and we're not getting caught up in trivial things that are not good for our mental state. Anything you guys
Sure.
want to add to the intersection there of Freemasonry and as it applies to taking care of your mental health?
Yeah, personally, one thing that I have really embraced during this time. Keep in mind, I work from home, so there's hardly any change for me in when it comes to the current situation of social isolation. I'm very much a homebody. I keep to myself. Even with neighbors, we say hello and we speak every now and then, but they stay in their house, I stay in mine, and there's a very marked distinction in the lifestyle that I follow here uh, compared to what I had in Puerto Rico, where neighbors, are like very close and family. Anyway, so one thing that I've noticed is that I'm as a family, we are leaning into organization and clearing clutter and cleaning, and it, there is a relaxing, there is a comforting thing in having an environment that is orderly. And when it comes to the application of Masonry, where you have the organization of our time, the organization of our thoughts, the organization of our actions, now is a perfect time for us to holistically have that effort of organization to really get control over our thoughts and get control over our physical environment. Because it can be, if you are stressed because of the shortage of products or because of some people's overreaction or lack of control, that feeling may be exacerbated whenever you come to a home that's disorderly, or when you finally sit down to work at your desk and you can't find your things. So I recommend for those brothers who have an opportunity to dedicate some time to take this time to organize their every aspect of their life if they can. And it pays dividends.
That's good advice.
Nothing like going to bed and knowing that the dishes are cleaning themselves in the washer, your laundry is done, and when you wake up in the morning and sit in your desk, it's organized.
Well,
That's a hypothetical.
the 20
not happening here.
Sure thing, Danny Tanner.
So the 24-inch gauge still applies, right?
Ooh, even if you're working from home.
So that's one of the biggest things that I found that's been helpful to me, as I, being an incredibly social person, am adjusting to life. Working from home. I get up, I start my routine. I shower, I get dressed in pseudo work clothes, and get breakfast and start the day. Like I think there was one day this week where I got up and just decided to rush into work without doing that routine, and I suffered pretty much the entire day for it. I just felt like something was off. So being able to stick to your routine and being able to subdivide out your day appropriately, as you can, because we've got kids running around and things like that. There are distractions at home that aren't in the workplace. I think that's one way to really make sure that you're getting your mind frame right for being productive and just feeling a lot better at home.
Yeah, Juan and I are big fans of like building good habits, right? So there's a lot of research about just, again, getting that control of a good habit. And I think back to, there's a quote that's often attributed to Aristotle. Don't know if he really said it, but it says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." And so the same is true for creating new routines, right? So we all have to create new routines as we're impacted by this. Even if we're still going to work, like Donnie, we have new impacts in our environment and surrounding. If for no other reason, we can't go shopping to the same stores we always did. Okay, so you have to create a new routine, a new habit about not just how you interact with the world, but then how you interact with yourself. So I think that's a good tip there, is to create a new, hopefully productive habit, and try it. So like stick with something. You know, I don't know if it's true or not, but what, like the 30-day test, 40-day test, if you can, you know, not break the chain for 30 or 40 days, then you may create a habit that sticks. And so, I mean, one thing that I'm personally doing is trying to not break the chain. Since April 1st, I've been sticking to a new meditation routine. I've tried meditation off and on, and so so far, knock on wood, I'm actually sticking to it for more than 8 days, 9 days. So check in on me on the end of the month. But that's my goal, is to at least commit to, and that's it. Don't try to commit to a year. Commit to 30 days, and see if that works for you. If it doesn't, you tried. No biggie.
I tell you what, you guys are hitting the nail right on the head with your responses. So a hugely important thing to do to try and manage your anxiety about the situation going on, and while you're stuck at home and things like that, is to try and create a schedule and some sense of normalcy in your daily routine. And one of you mentioned something about kids, just sort of off the cuff, but this is actually hugely important for kids too. I have children, elementary school age children, and so we're trying to get them to keep a schedule of some sort. And it's not nearly as rigorous or as strict as it would be if they were actually in a school program. But we're doing the best we can with trying to keep a schedule so that they know what to expect. Humans are creatures of habit, and just like John said, we love habits. We love good habits. We love bad habits. It doesn't really matter what the habit is, as long as we get to do it over and over again. And so even when there's been changes in our routine, whether it's not being able to go to work or not being able to go to the grocery store as often as we did before, or whatever those changes are, finding ways to create new habits and new routines and accepting them as normal goes a long way towards reducing those feelings of anxiety. A lot of that anxiety comes from the unknown. What am I supposed to be doing now? Where am I supposed to be going? And if you have come up with a plan, and if you've come up with a daily routine, whether it's adding meditation in the morning or whether it's adding a walk around your neighborhood, appropriately masked, as the CDC now recommends for everybody, all of those things, doing them and repeating them help to create that system that gives us a sense of security. So good job, guys. You hit it right on the head.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Donnie. Just I was outside with my 3-year-old this morning, playing with him, and he just stopped dead as we're blowing bubbles and looked up at me and said, "Daddy, I miss people." And I'm like, yeah, you can. Yeah. We're inherently social beings and individuals, and he goes to a Mother's Day out twice a week, and that's been shut down for the past 3 weeks. So he's recognizing, I'm able to see in him that he's recognizing that there's something different. And yeah, it's just, it's really fascinating to see that little brain work.
Yeah. It's interesting. I haven't worked a lot with kids in my practice, but I have worked with kids some, and I have my own kids, so I see them, and I'm convinced that children don't feel things any differently than adults do. They just talk about it a lot more liberally than the rest of us.
There you go. So you want an honest answer? Ask a child.
Bingo.
So
also,
go ahead, Juan.
I'm sorry. Before we move on from that topic, that the children, they have their eyes on us. Like right now, most of us are doing school for the children, and how we handle ourselves, how we handle the household in the middle of a crisis if they understand that there's a crisis. I don't know what you guys have chosen to do, but I've tried to be very forthcoming with my children for them to understand what's happening in the world and the seriousness of it. But I've tried to keep very in the front of my mind that they are watching as I lead. So they're paying attention to what I am doing in the middle of this, how we are making decisions, how my wife and I come together and very seriously talk about things and make decisions, move forward, and try to bring, like Donnie said, a sense of no, normalcy to what could be really shocking. Yeah, going from everybody goes their own way, the children go to school, my wife goes to her work, I stay here, and then now all of a sudden everyone is here at the same time, all the time. The way that we are handling that is something that I can see has an impact on them, and I feel fortunate that we've been able to handle it well, even though school has
Yeah,
been
sure.
trying.
Our, our mood and our anxiety definitely telegraphs out to the other people in our household, whether it's your spouse or your roommates or your kids, particularly your kids, because you're right. They see what we're experiencing, and they see how we're behaving, and they emulate that. So if we're feeling anxious about what's going on in the world, which there's pretty legitimate reasons to feel anxious right now, they're going to feel that anxiety too. And we might see changes in their behavior. They might be crankier than usual. They might have periods of sadness or tearfulness. You could see changes in their eating habits. These are not that different from changes in adult
I was
behaviors
gonna
that
say
we
we're still
see.
talking about our spouses, right? Because I'm seeing all of that, all the above.
Right. Right. We're going to say it's the kids, and then you can just replace whoever you want in the quotation marks there, because really it's the same changes that you see in adults as you see in children. But we like to point at children and say, "Oh, look at all these behavior changes that they're having." It's much easier to see it in them than it is to see it in ourselves. Um, so not knowing what's going on really contributes to that anxiety. So if you haven't talked to your children, I can guarantee you that they are having some anxiety about what's not going on. And so I think that it's very important to have age appropriate discussions with your kids about what's going on in the world. We're doing things differently now. Why are we doing things differently? Um, what are we doing to keep our family safe? We want to make sure that everybody feels safe and secure. And so we're doing things a little differently than what we used to. And obviously, younger children will have different abilities to understand things than older children. But I think it's important not to pretend like everything is fine because they know that it's not. And instead, we need to have frank, open conversations that are still supportive and encouraging with our kids, um, because I don't think any of us would ever want to look back and feel like we had done more or said more to our family.
Yeah, I mean that's true. So I mean, I try to be a glass half full kind of person most of the time, and looking at what's the impact been to me being forced to work from home is again get more sleep. I'm actually getting to play with my kids more, and so I trying to change my routine to do just that is to appreciate what we have. Given the constraints we have, make the best of it, and don't try to go down dark hole. I'm not perfect. I know that there's a first couple weeks were a little rough because it was there was just so much happening at once, all around the country, all around the world, for that matter. And it would just seem like every day the news was just this and this. This is getting worse, and oh my gosh, and this is broken, and $2 trillion later, like oh my gosh. So like whoa, I just need to unplug for a second. And I mean that's another pro tip, right? It's just to like, especially for the news. The news can be very controlling, very manipulative. Remember, they are there to get people to watch the advertisers,
Mm-hmm.
advertisements. So, yeah, I mean, do you have anything else you want to add on kind of stepping back and unplugging from some of that negative influence?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought that up because stepping back is an excellent way to help manage some of your anxiety. It's very easy for us to get caught up in the 24-hour news cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, any time of the day or night you can turn on the radio or the television, and that's what's on right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
COVID all the time,
All the
um,
time.
all the time. Yeah, and so, if you're prone to anxiety about what's going on, or if you find yourself getting wrapped up, remind yourself it's okay to step back from the news. You can get your news once a day or twice a day. You don't have to get your news constantly. And there's a fine line between staying well informed about what's going on and immersing yourself in an unhealthy way in events that you can't control. Um, because there's a lot that we can't do. We can listen to rates of infection, and we can listen to mortality rates, and we can listen to how many people are sick over here and what they're doing over there. But when you're stuck at home, sitting in your studio behind your microphone, there's nothing that you can really put your hands on to make a big difference right now, and that's very, very frustrating for a lot of people. And so, one thing that we can do to try and reduce some of that anxiety is to um, refocus on what we can do immediately in our home, in our family, for ourselves, for our children, for our significant others, and take a step back from that big picture. And if it means you have to just get your news once a day, then that's fine. And in fact, some of the resources that I was looking at earlier to prepare tonight even suggested that for people that are really prone to having problems with anxiety, get somebody to filter your news for you. Get somebody to give you the highlights. Don't feel like you have to log on and read it for yourself. You can say, hey, you know, were there any new developments today? And that's okay too. You have to figure out where that line is for yourself between being well informed and just torturing yourself with things you can do nothing about.
Hey Donnie, a separate but related question. Have you any experience with like music therapy?
Oh, yeah. So I used to have some music therapists when I was working in an inpatient program in the hospital
Mm-hmm.
that would come a couple of times a week. Yeah, I loved working with music therapists. That's not something that I've ever done hands on, but I've certainly participated in some music therapy groups, and I think it's fantastic service.
Right. And I mean, and I know that it is often used, at least in the hospital setting, for to promote healing and promote relaxation and
Hmm.
just help the body kind of get away from the distraction of the pain. But it I could see how it could also help with you put on kind of your favorite records. Yeah, that's a long black thing that the kids used to listen to before there were CDs, and it's just something that can help people have better feelings if they have some good music, some good memories that are associated to music. That might be something that could also help to separate from the news. You put on something positive, whether it's a favorite movie, favorite music, those kind of things, to help pass the time while we're all stuck at home.
Yeah, music is great, but really, whatever hobbies you have, it's great to be able to engage in your hobbies. It's something that you're going to enjoy doing, and that's going to take your attention away from all the things that you can't control that are going on right now. And if you don't have a hobby that you can engage in right now, then this is a perfect time to develop a new one. If there's something that you've wanted to learn how to do and you've just never gotten around to it, now is the time. We've got nothing but time right now,
Yeah, I got
and
a
there's a
little.
lot of resources.
Yeah, I was going to get
Go
on a
ahead.
soapbox about that because I mean there is a meme that's floating around, that says, well, if you're not starting a side hustle or you're not learning a new skill or you're not doing this, during your extra time home, then you can't complain or something like that. And then the meme also is followed up with someone crossing it out, going, if you're not doing that, that's also okay because we're going through a pandemic right now. Um,
Right.
and yet, you know, learning a new skill can be done very cheaply, and or free, right? So there are a lot of resources available that, um, even if you're not creating a side hustle and you're not trying to do something for to double your income or whatever that is, you can still at least improve yourself with Masonry. You can still improve yourself with a new skill, a new trade. You can improve yourself by just, again, I've always wanted to work on X. I've always wanted to finish that puzzle that's right over there on the wall. Great. Start it now, because you've got plenty of time to do that. So yeah, it's something to think about.
And one thing to
definitely.
note that I've noticed is that it's almost harder for me to consciously make time to relax and do those good easy things that I've always wanted to do, because my schedule's been so upended and out of whack. And had a brother, Matt Botts, who's been on the show a couple times, post something on LinkedIn the other day, basically saying, you know what, if you have the time available, don't be afraid to just take vacation time from work, and so that you can actually relax and do some things that are fun without your telework stretching into like 12-hour days, because you're stopping every 15 minutes to take care of something else. So that's another thing. We have to be very conscious about compartmentalizing our time and setting aside that time to relax, to learn something new, to do some research, whatever you're really interested in that you wanted to do for a while.
Yeah, and even to take it one step further, stretching yourself to learn these new things and to do these new things is great. Um, but it's also okay to just engage in good, healthy self-care to make sure that your mental health is stable, and that you are staying healthy mentally. And sometimes that means learning a new thing and stretching yourself, but sometimes that means saying, I'm not going to do that new thing and I'm not going to stretch myself right now. I'm going to go take a nap. And sometimes that's okay. Now, if that happens every day and you're sleeping,
Yeah.
18 hours a day, then there's a problem. But good, healthy self-care includes things like saying, no, I'm not going to do that right now, and setting up healthy boundaries to protect your time and your energy.
Yeah, I'm the kind of guy that will fill time. Like if there's spare time, I'm going to find something to do. So yes, I have a hard time saying no. It's that lost word in Masonry, right? So I have a hard
Right.
time saying no, and I know I need it. I know I need to take a break. I know I need to slow down sometimes. I know it's okay to just like chill out and go to bed early, get some rest. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's good advice.
Well, particularly in times when people are feeling stressed out and anxious, we tend to spin our wheels a lot. We feel like something bad is happening. We have to do something. And so we look for things to do. And often we find things that aren't going to change the thing that's stressing us out. But we spin our wheels and spin our wheels and spin our wheels, working really, really hard because we feel like we have to be doing something. And we wind up, exhausting ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally, um, on something that's really not even related to the problem at hand. So learning to say no and to set up those healthy boundaries, it's really hard for some people. But it's something that is really important to make sure that you are maintaining that healthy balance. We talked about the 24-inch gauge, and I think maybe we could compartmentalize it even further down between the 3 units that we already have, to make sure that we're using our time in ways not only to serve our fellow man and our communities, but also to take care of ourselves.
So as we start to wind down the topic for tonight, what are some resources that that are available, Donnie, or advice for people who are still dealing with some anxiety, some depression, some just still working through this disruption? Do you have any good resources that people can turn to get more information?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the things that tends to add to feelings of anxiety and depression is listening to a lot of rumors, con- considering the worst case scenario about everything. And so I recommend that if you are getting information about COVID, that you are getting it from a limited number of reliable sources. The Center for Disease Control, CDC.org, is an excellent resource to use. They have up-to-date information. The World Health Organization, WHO.int, is an excellent source for information. And by making sure that you're getting your information from a limited number of reliable sources, you're going to cut down on all that sort of extra noise that you can get. As far as managing your mental health, I'm a huge fan of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. They have a fantastic webpage with resources for wherever you are in the country. It's nami.org, nami.org. And they've got great search tools. So if you have a mental health diagnosis, you can just put your diagnosis into the search bar and you're going to come up with articles, with information, with teaching about mental illness. But there you go, you get a screenshot. They've also got a lot of information right now about the coronavirus. So that's really, really helpful. Let me see. Those are some of my favorites. Harvard also has some great resources on mental illness. Let me see if I can find the name of the service here. It's the Harvard Relaxation Room. So if you have a chance to check that out, they have got a lot of resources devoted to mindfulness techniques. One of the simplest things that we can do to protect our mental health is to practice some mindfulness techniques. And it can be as simple as remembering to stop, take a breath, observe what's happening, how you're feeling, what's going on, and then proceed, STOP. It's one of the simplest mindfulness exercises you can do, but it helps us to slow down and to really think about what's happening, how we're responding, how we're feeling about things. They've got some great pre-recorded guided meditations and things like that as well that are available for free. You can find all kinds of stuff on YouTube, guided meditations and things like that. Unfortunately, on YouTube, you'll find a varying level of quality for that. Some of them are fantastic and very well done, and others not so much. But if you check out the Harvard Relaxation Room, you're going to be sure to find some good evidence-supported resources there.
Hey, Donnie, as we start to wrap up, could you talk just a little bit, perhaps, about the stigma of mental health and how truly important it is for us to take care of our mental health as much as our physical health? Because I think that's just something that everybody overlooks.
You want to talk about this in the last 6 minutes of the program?
I know. I'm always a day late and a dollar short.
Yes, obviously there is still a huge stigma around issues of mental health in our society. More and more we're seeing celebrities and personalities and things like that come forward and say, yes, I have this diagnosis. And that's great. That's important to acknowledge that this is a thing that people have. And so we're starting to make some real strides towards destigmatizing that. But we're all humans. We have physical bodies, and we usually talk a lot about how it's important to take care of our physical body. But we still don't always do a good job of taking care of our emotions and our mental health. We live in a very, very fast-paced society where we're expected to push hard and grind continuously. And if you don't, or if you can't, then that's a sign of weakness or a sign of failure. And that's just not the case. Sometimes we succeed more by setting boundaries and learning to say no to certain things. The only thing that we can do is to continue to talk about mental health freely and openly. And that when we learn that somebody has a mental health issue, that we don't take the position of talking about them or saying, "Ooh, did you hear about them and their issue or their addiction problem or their depression?" These people have problems and they need to be treated, and sometimes they need to be treated in hospitals. But that's no different from somebody's heart disease that needs to be treated in a hospital, or their diabetes that needs to be treated in a hospital from time to time. So
knee surgery or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Everybody loves talking about their hemorrhoids and their bad hips. But when it comes to talking about your bipolar disorder and how that's affected your life, that's a whole different thing. So we still tend to see the symptoms of mental illness as personal failures or as weakness. I think that we're coming around to the place where if somebody says, oh, I have bipolar disorder or I suffer from depression, I think we're okay with accepting that diagnosis. But we're still not very good at accepting the symptoms or what that means in somebody's life and how it affects their behavior and their feelings and how they present themselves to the world. So we're getting there, but we've still got some ways to go.
And that's a great way to kind of close the topic for today, because yeah, I'm sure we could go on and on about all of the things we can do to always improve our mental health, no matter where we are in that spectrum. So thanks again, Brother Donnie, for coming on, sharing your expertise, your knowledge, your experience, and especially some of those links at the end. With that,
Yeah,
let's start.
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. We'll start going around the horn here to start wrapping things up, starting with Juan Sepulveda.
All right. Well, Donnie, thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us and putting some perspectives for us to think about. I do agree with you. It's very important for us to change or do what we can to curb the stigma that is put on mental health situations. Nobody who hasn't gone through a mental health situation personally or within their family can really understand what it's about and the ramifications that come from it. So for those who are watching or listening, if any of this resonated with you, we implore you to do what you can to keep yourself healthy, strong, focused, and if you know of anybody who needs to hear this message, please share this with them. Now for my promotion, if you're looking for something structured to do during this time, and if you think you can bring more order to your day, practical application of the lessons of Masonry into your life, you know where to find my Applied Freemasonry program. So just head over there and we'll be happy to have you. We have a community that continues to grow and continues to implement the lessons of Masonry. So if you want to check it out, go to appliedfreemasonry.com. Thank you, brothers.
That's great. Yeah, it's a good resource. Okay, next up, Jason Richards.
All right. Wow, this is probably one of my favorite episodes of all time that we've done. Mental health is such an important topic, especially right now. And I think we've grown as a worldwide community in the past, even 10, 15 years to attach much less of a stigma to mental health issues, but it's still there, and it's hard because a lot of times you can see a physical issue, whether it's a limp or something else, but a lot of times mental health is just under the surface, and you really have to be looking hard to even notice it. So I implore everybody watching, whether you're a brother or not, take some time for yourself. We're going to be in this with the pandemic for the long haul, and just try to do some things that will relax you, build some healthy schedules, some healthy routines, some healthy habits, embrace the good things and the good changes about the situation. For me, I'm spending so much more time with my wife and son now that I'm home teleworking most all of the time, and I wouldn't trade the past couple days for anything in the world, just with how much time I've been able to spend with my family. And so that's my recommendation to everybody watching. Just don't be afraid to take care of yourself, and take care of your own mental health, because at the end of the day, that's you have to be okay with you, and you have to take care of you in order to be comfortable with you. So with that, I've had a lot of stuff going on. I've been speaking more virtually since this kicked off than I was speaking in person. So head over to Refracted Light on Facebook, and we've got a list of events. I'm speaking to some brothers in DC virtually on Monday, and then in a couple weeks I'll be doing a Masonic Research 101 presentation for Refracted Light. So go and check that out. I've got the event posted up on the calendar, and it's just a way to, it's really good for folks who are really interested in doing research but don't quite know how to start. And so go and check that out. But otherwise, I'll hand it off back to you, John, after I just tell Donnie thanks so much for coming out. This has been an amazing episode, and your skills and your expertise are just so incredibly timely, relevant, and needed throughout the world right now. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing right now in the midst of this pandemic. We just really appreciate your service to the community.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I guess if I could leave you with one thought, it would just to be kind to others and to be kind to yourselves. So thanks again for having me on.
Well, there you go. So again, thank you from me as well, and from all the listeners. This has been a great conversations in the chat rooms, and really have learned a lot from you, Donnie, tonight, listening to your experiences and some of the resources you have. I want to thank all those who have been participating, creating a community, a virtual community, both in the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat, and especially to Rob Jackson, Amadou 2002, Art Monk, and of course Joe Martinez, who all of them. Yeah, there's a guy, Joe M. Yeah, he seems like an okay guy, especially because one of his first contributions was #Donnie Rocks. So you're getting a lot of love, Donnie. All right, so yeah, this has been fascinating, and I really hope everyone's got something out of it. Everyone take care of yourselves, wash your hands, and we hope you enjoy the program. So until next time, thanks for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.